All right, guys. So tonight we're going to talk about kindness, the fruit of kindness, from one of the fruits of the Spirit, right? And I wanted to use that because if you were, how many of you heard Tyler's sermon on Sunday?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Big time.
Awesome. One of the reasons, Tyler and I chatted before that sermon, as he was thinking and prepping and looking for wisdom as how to help in this. The word kindness kept coming up, and I said, we're going to do Fighting for Fruits on Wednesday, and I'll just, if you're going to preach, even if you reference it a little bit, it seems like I'll tag team on it, and we'll talk about kindness, because it's a really important fruit right now. And one of the things that maybe I'll ask you guys real quick, when you think of the fruit of kindness that God calls us to, what comes to mind? What are some of the themes? What are some of the examples? Just what comes to mind when you think of kindness, especially as it relates to the Bible? I want to kind of keep it at least somewhat bound to that.
Being open-minded.
Okay. And how is that kind?
Because they may have different views, different thoughts that are different than yours.
Yeah.
And just being open to it and reacting kindly in how you respond to them, and not like shutting them down. I think is showing kindness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thinking of examples like Jesus at the well, talking to the woman and, knowing her life and kindly examining it and kindly showing an example of how. I can think of 5,000 examples, but that's what I'm thinking of. When I think of kindness, I think of the awesome kindness of Jesus.
That's a great example.
I think being helpful. And so that would also mean like serving others ultimately. Yeah.
Anybody else? So let me ask you this more specific question. Why is kindness so hard sometimes? Because all those things sound wonderful. It should be easy to do. Moina, I'm sure you're kind all day long, right? You've never once been unkind.
I'm a sinful person. I'm still a sinful person.
You're the only one. The rest of us are perfect, flawless, I believe the word we're using is. No, that's right. So let me ask you this, why is kindness hard? Because and then maybe, let me ask you, before you answer, Nancy, one, I'm going to add another harder part to it. Why is it hard? And why is it so hard right now? Meaning, in the end of May, we all have been in quarantine for a while. In this situation, we find ourselves collectively in. Why is kindness so hard?
For me, our comfort of people. I love people. And so I'm disoriented from my sense of being connected. And I think I am personalizing too much. And I am, what is the other word? Assuming too much. And I can normally not. And it's not that I'm not being kind, but it's far more of a challenge for me right now. This is really a hard season, and I'm walking around going, I have everything. This is lovely. This is, my poll's finished, thank God. I have my dog. I think that's mine, just because I'm.
Yeah. What else? What makes it hard to be kind, or what situations make it hard to be kind, and why?
The lack of control. Because we don't have control of a lot of the situations that are kind of going around right now. So maybe it can be hard to be kind if you don't have control over certain things. And understanding that.
I'll even take that a step further. we're actually really kind to people that feel like they're lining up and giving us more control, right? It's hard to be kind to those that we feel are either fighting for our control or losing our control. We're really selective, aren't we? We like to be kind to those who are backing our agenda. And those who oppose our agenda, it's a more difficult situation. All right. So if you guys have your Bible, we're going to turn to Luke 10. And we're going to look at a story that Jesus told. It popped, as I thought about kindness, I thought about the way I've taught it before, which was just kind of breaking it down. Oh man, Nancy's run off. She probably spotted a person in her extrovertedness. She's going to go. But in this story, I thought it does a really good job of pulling apart some of the tensions that we feel and we're experiencing now. And I think it helps us, give us a case study for kindness on that. So in Luke 10, verse 30, it's a very famous story, but maybe have you guys all heard the story of the Good Samaritan?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yeah.
Good Samaritan? Okay, cool. Nancy?
Oh, yes, many times.
Awesome. I didn't want to assume that, but I'm gonna go through this fairly slowly because I want us to pull apart some of the nuances. So, any of you here a 2,000-year-old Hebrew? Any of you?
No.
So there's none of you. Okay, well, that's fine. Some of the points of this story. Oh, can you guys see me?
Yeah.
There we go.
You're frozen.
Some of the points of this story are going to be lost. Are going to be harder for us because contextually, culturally, they don't pop off the screen. But this would have been a really controversial story. This would have been one that would have been shocking to hear. We love it because it's so sweet and kind, but this was not a sweet and kind story. This was a shocking story that Jesus told here. So it says in verse 30, Jesus replied to them, because they asked the question, who's my neighbor? And that's not the question we're going to ask, but he's answering that question. But we're going to look through this through the lens of kindness, because that's a fair thing to look at for this chapter. And Jesus replied to him, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers. Pause. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was famous. It was famous because there was people often robbed on that road. So Jesus is describing they went where? Oh man, they should have known they were going to get robbed if they did that. Like, this was all about why did they go down that road, right? Jesus picked the bad neighborhood and said, and they went in that neighborhood and bad things happened to them, right? That's kind of what he's at least trying to imply. And I don't mean that as in bad neighborhood, the way we think about it. I think he's just painting the picture of this road was not a good road. It was dangerous. And they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. What is Jesus painting in this first couple pages here, first couple sentences? He's setting the stage. What does he make sure you understand pretty clearly?
That a man was robbed and his clothes were taken away and he's just sitting there on the road.
Yeah. Maybe even sitting is too kind, right?
Laying down.
Kind of blaming him maybe a little. Like some people could have blamed this guy for doing such a stupid thing, and maybe you could just say he deserved it.
Yeah, that's possible, right? The
And
audience, depending, yeah.
I'm not thinking that, but
Yeah.
I like to blame people.
Yeah, he's also making it clear this is not some small issue, right? He's made sure you understand this person is in serious trouble. This is a vulnerable person through any sort of act, right? Whether it's their own choice, they shouldn't have been on that road at night or whatever it is, or it's just, yeah, this happens. He's painting the picture so that we go, God, this isn't someone that just tripped on a rock and we go, no, what's the big deal? We're saying this is a situation that deserves and requires what?
Kindness?
Attention.
Attention.
There is a call to action in this character, isn't there?
Yeah.
You see how he set that up?
Yep.
If Jesus said, and a man had a hangnail, you're like, what am I supposed to do about that? What's the point, right? But here Jesus goes, All right, you feel the motivation, you feel your heart saying, this is a situation that needs action. Let's read what he says. And by chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed on the other side. All right, let's pause for a second again. Priest, what are these people?
Privileged.
Privileged for sure, but what else?
Religious.
Religious, and not just religious, what else?
They teach religion.
They're the religious leaders.
Leaders, yeah.
These are the pastors of the day.
Yeah.
Right? You want to change the story. This is somebody doing mission. This is someone who's a pastor. This is someone who's involved in the church and is raising their hand to say, I want to serve and be part of God's kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's who this is on this. Now, let me ask you this. He passes by on the other side. What are some of the reasons why that might have happened? Remember, Jesus' call to action in the first verse is pretty apparent just by setting up the story. So as a listener, your first thought would be, wow, this person passed by on the other side. That feels off, right? Why? Why would he pass
He
by?
wouldn't have to look at it. So he could just walk away, and the further away he is, he doesn't have to deal with it.
Yep. So there's a physical distancing, right? He doesn't even stare. He's like, don't even want to deal with this. Right? What else?
He didn't really want to go up to the man and see what was wrong with him and just like ignore him.
Yeah. Yep. What else? Anything else?
I mean, it's like the rudest, so anti who he is, and he's doing it quickly, so probably no one sees him, even notice him. I mean, it's just really terrible is what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It just highlights it.
Mm-hmm. Let me add two more elements to this, just so you can think maybe more about the motivation or the lack of motivation. We don't know what time of day it is. Imagine if you saw someone robbed, beaten half to death. The thought could be, man, there could be someone else. Are they still here? Like, am I next? Right?
Mm-hmm.
There could be an element of fear and self-preservation in this. His walking on the other side kind of indicates that there was a lot of motives, more than maybe just his own self-preservation, right? He doesn't want to deal with it or get his hands dirty. And I'll tell you one other thing that's not obvious to us as 2,000-year non-Hebrews, but he was a priest. And one of the laws of priests was if he were to engage in this situation and dealing with it, there was a part of him that would have been unclean. And there was some laws in the Old Testament that basically said, priests, you have to be careful. Your cleanliness before God, these things make you unclean. This situation would have made him unclean. He could have been, people speculate, going to Jerusalem, which is where the temple was, and he could have said to himself, I can't deal with this because I have a mission and a ministry, and I can't be unclean. I have to keep to my, this messes with my ministry. This gets in the way of the job I have of serving and preaching God's word to the people.
The selfishness there.
Makes sense?
Yeah, totally. And wouldn't you have to do like a mitzvah or something in between?
There's a lot of, depending on how you got unclean, there was a lot of different of how to become clean. So again, but the thinking of this again is you said selfish. I think that's a good word. It's also a complete misunderstanding of the heart of God, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Here he goes, he had a situation in front of him that required kindness. There's our word, right? We know it requires compassion and kindness. And he said, my ministry to God is more important than that. And remember, Jesus is telling this story. So even he is saying, you know, all that religious stuff you do for me, watch this story. I want you to see what I think of you doing religious actions and missing the heart of God. Does that make sense?
Amen. Yeah.
So the next part is this. Likewise, a Levi, when he came, the place he saw him and passed on the other side. Again, a Levite would have been one of the 12 tribes of Israel. So this would have been, Israel is made up of tribes, and they would have known, it would have been like an ancestry, right? It would have been an ethnicity of sorts. And this is someone he picked who was, Levites were where priests came from. He basically picks an ethnic group that thought they were particularly special with God. So he's now doing Jesus is doing two offensive things in this story. Going, all right, your pastor failed. And by the way, your most ethnically appropriate, pure, thoughtful group also went on the other side. Hi, Sherry.
Totally.
She's gonna unmute in a second. Sherry, we're doing Luke 10, verse 30, the Good Samaritan. We're studying kindness tonight, and we're using that as our example. And we have a small group, so we're far more interactive.
Oh, okay.
Unless you get rowdy, and then I'll just kick you out, and we'll.
Oh, mute.
That's right.
Well,
Nancy's
you got Nancy and I together. Things could get a little out of hand.
Challenge accepted. We'll do this. Yeah. So there we have the Levite walking by. So at this point, you begin to see the points Jesus is trying to make here, right? He's actually upending some things. And I'm going to jump back to this concept of kindness. Why is kindness so hard for us right now? Some of these cues are going to be what we come back to, right? And then verse 33, but a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him. And when he saw him, he felt compassion. There's our word right there, kindness, right? Another form of the word kindness is compassion. This right now is the most wildly offensive verse in this story. Do you know why?
Because it was a Samaritan.
And what is a Samaritan?
Would someone else like to answer? If a Samaritan was unclean, was dirty, was there, you just didn't go near a Samaritan.
Yeah, they were ethnically, this is almost the most racial thing you can think of in the New Testament, right? In one sense, is Samaritans were shunned. People went miles out of their way walking to avoid the land that the Samaritans owned. They thought they were half-breeds. They hated them. They despised them. And here Jesus immediately inserts somebody into the story that would have caused a great deal of stirring. Because again, Jesus's point is you have to understand my heart. And I'm just going to jump to part of the chase here is that they thought their religion and their ethnic roots were what God particularly looked upon and liked. And here God throws both of those out and says, that Samaritan who you despised, he did this thing where he was on a journey. Notice the rest of them were walking by. He's on a journey. This is someone who is going someplace, who's invested time, probably money. This is wildly inconvenient. And there's one of our first points I want to bring out. Why is kindness so hard? Because it often calls us into what?
Inconvenience.
Inconvenience. How much inconvenience, Sherry? Lots.
Depends on the circumstances.
That's right. You got it. And here's the realities. We typically all have our threshold on convenience.
Amen.
If we weigh the cost, right? And we begin to do this mental math that says, if you want my kindness, I'm willing to go so far. But after that, the price of kindness is too high, right? And here the Samaritan does this thing. He felt compassion. So remarkable thing on that, right? Compassion. He felt it. So his feelings were involved. So kindness is not just an act, right? You can see that he stopped. He chose to make an action, but then he invested something that some of us is very costly. He invested his emotions. How many times have you been a part of something you're like, I can't get near that. That's too much. That's too hard. That's going to cause me to, that's going to rob me of happiness. That's going to make, and you see this emotional calculation we begin to do. Go ahead.
For me, that's totally true. And often I'll usurp it because what Christ does is change our hearts. And I am really not the kindest person, but I do that mental math. And then I go to the word, and then your math goes back. So it's like, it's quite challenging to be a Christian.
Yeah.
Shockingly, and it's so rewarding that the answers are all right there. You don't even have to do the math. Just do it. It's inconvenient. But sometimes I have to say, honestly, you can be a yeser that just is willing and willing and willing. And sometimes you're not. You're always supposed to be kind. I take that back. Kindness is never not to be offered. But I can see in this, no, I would never walk by this person. You're never to walk by someone. So I'll just be quiet.
No, that's good, Nancy. What else? Anybody else? This concept of calculated convenience.
I think for me, am I on? I think for me, sometimes it's been feeling that I had a sense of obligation to somebody else. And that if I derailed, that then I would be inconveniencing someone else because I'm not meeting my obligation to that other person.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, we pick on the priest earlier, but maybe part of what he was feeling was a little what you were. I've got a church service waiting for me. I really don't have time for this. One person versus 100. No. We often think about this concept, right, of, I mean, we always love people that step toward hurt, and you go, man, but don't you realize you could get hurt too. Your feelings could get hurt, your emotions. You're risking a great deal of your emotion that you don't have a guarantee. And I think that's a part of what can cause us to fear or hold back or hesitate when kindness is needed. Let me read the rest of this here. And he came to him, that means the Samaritan came and bandaged up his wounds, poured oil and wine on them, and put him on his own beast, and brought him to the inn and took care of him. There is enough in that verse to meditate on for a second. He didn't throw a blanket. He didn't toss some bandages over his shoulder. He got down in the ditch, and he got bloody, and he got messy, and it cost him again to be down there and to get his hands dirty in the situation. And again, he gave up his convenience. Now he's walking. His beast, I don't know what it is, but I can only imagine some amazing animal, right? Half mythical. We don't know. I just like my imagination. He doesn't say, so I'm going to go with unicorn at this point. And he puts him on it, and now he's walking. That's inconvenient.
Yes.
He takes him to the inn and took care of him. There's a sense of responsibility. And we're going to talk about how to do this in a world that has thousands of these situations, right? It can be overwhelming. We want to talk about that because I don't want to put that burden on you to say you walk out the door and suddenly you have to care for the world because you know about something. We're going to talk about this situation here. And on the next day, he, that is the Samaritan, took out 2 denarii. How much is a denarii?
I forget. It's a lot.
It's a day's wage, so it's a whole day. He took 2 days worth of his pay, and he gave it to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him. Whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you." That's pretty much. What do you say?
Who does that? No one. That's generosity. That's heart. That I love. That's my favorite part of the story.
What else struck you guys? I'm gonna pause and let you guys reflect for a minute. What else jumped out at you?
Yeah, he went above and beyond because it wasn't even just like, oh, here, but it was, take care of him. And if there's more, I'll pay back more later. So he could have just, kept it like, oh, here, here's an inn, let him stay there and he'll be on his way. But, he kind of thought of the aftercare too. So.
Yeah. What else?
I was thinking about the part where he put the oil and the what was it? Was it oil and vinegar? Oil and something.
Wine.
Vinegar wine. On because that would have been out of his own supply for his own journey.
Mhm.
So he took of his own ration and gave, knowing that he may not now have enough to get him to where he needs to go.
Yeah. It's amazing, right? Jesus lays down some, he made this, there's no parsing this story, is there?
No.
There's no like, well, I guess he could have, and what did you mean by Samaritan? Did you mean like one of those ones that's well-behaved, like Hebrew-like? Or we're talking like a Samaritan? There's no, he just goes at this story. And what is also amazing to me too is when I thought about this in kindness. So let me back up to this. I think one of the things that I wanted to take away and maybe push onto you guys to consider as well is, where do we draw lines on kindness? Where have we budgeted? And where have we said, I'll be kind up to this point, but then I will not go further, because that could be years worth of kindness that I have to demonstrate, that I get no return on that kindness investment back to me from the other person, right? This idea of ROI, how many return on investment. I'll be kind, but I'm going to want something. I need to reciprocate. I want, and often it's, you see people who would give, oh, I felt good. I gave and I felt good. That's the return they're looking for, that feeling, right? This is a return that no one saw, and that actually put him in more debt to the inn, right? He comes back and finds out the guy raided the mini fridge, and all of a sudden he's like, all right, that's on my tab. I get it. And there's this idea. But let me ask you this: where do we possibly find the strength in our lives to deal with the situations God puts in our path?
Yeah.
How do we even get close to this? This is often daunting and frankly a little discouraging, right? If we're honest with ourselves, we're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not good Samaritan material. I'm probably somewhere between a nice Levite, right? I might have stopped and said, hey, you okay? I'll call 911 for you, right? How can we possibly do this?
I think it's kind of built in our DNA, our personage, because there's people that just jump to people's rescue. It's in their nature. There's like seeing someone being beaten up. Literally, my car just pulls in. It's not me, it's Jesus. But it's something in my nature that I'm a little more adventurous. So I think more adventurous. So I don't want to say there's a lot in that one, because there's so many situations that I get thrown in, and it looks like I'm taking, and I don't weigh the risks. I dive in the water, and that's not healthy.
Yeah,
so
but what about people?
Learn to dive in a healthy water.
Yeah. But but when you run out of your own energy, your personality's not that way.
Exactly.
There has to be a deeper answer. There has to be an answer. What is the Samaritan? And Sherry brought up the fact that he put himself at risk with his supplies. So what truth about God do you think he knows as he looks at his supplies and gives them away?
They're
What
endless.
truth of
That no matter how much you give, you're always going to get it back. I mean, that they're endless. If you go to God for anything, you're covered. You're going to be fine, whatever that means. It doesn't mean it's going to be the same. It doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. But God is endless. Supply. I'll be quiet now.
No, that's good. Anybody else?
That you're never, it's not, he's never going to be without, and it's just oil and wine. It's just oil and wine. What he's doing and what he's using the oil and wine for is more than what the oil and wine is worth, in a sense. Yeah.
He's got some spiritual eyes, doesn't he, on this? and his material things that are opening up spiritual doors is a price worth paying.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think like the Good Samaritan like saw heart to heart that the guy on the floor like is just like him, and he wants to make the best life for him and do what's right. And like I don't know, like it began to ponder in my mind of thinking like it said like he like helped heal his wounds, all that stuff, and it like I'm not sure how much like people carry back then, but probably normally carries like a first aid kit, so he probably cut apart his own like ropes and cloth and healed all that stuff, and so he didn't really care what he was carrying. He wanted to get the best care for the wounded.
He valued life.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh, just thinking like he's doing what he would hope if it was himself, what somebody would do for him if he was that person on the street, you know, like show that same kind of kindness that he did for him.
Yeah, it's remarkable what he does here, right? He sees this person made in God's image, and he reacts to it as if that person had incredible value, worth before God. He didn't ask him questions like, you kind of deserved this, didn't you? What were you doing on this road at that time? You shouldn't have been. He does none of that, right? And guess what else? This person might have been a Hebrew that hated Samaritans. We don't know that. But in reality, we see someone stepping toward hurt way before, because he recognizes that he's aligned to how God views that man. And I think that is one of the keys to kindness is, God, give me this situation as you see it, both from the value and how your kingdom is hurting and the role I play in bringing aid to that suffering, but also give me the eyes to see the endless supplies that you have that I can tap into, whether it's my emotions, my energy, my dollars, my gifts, whatever that is. God, I want to see both, because I will step in generously, I will step in confidently, and I will step in a way that is serving your kingdom. And to me, that's at the heart of kindness there, isn't it? Kindness is not necessarily doing the math. It's stopping doing some of the math in our heads, right? And it's starting to do God's math that says, where you see hurt, here's the question, Jenny, we were chatting about before, and I saw you react to this, is how do we know which situations we're supposed to step in? I mean, there's probably someone in Africa, the classic starving in Africa comment, right? And it's true, but what are you doing about it? And the answer is, I don't know. I mean, what am I supposed? I'm sitting here in La Crescenta, you know, and I don't know the answers to all these things. And so the wonderful thing is that I would never try to impose on you which situations you're supposed to respond. So that means you have to be close to God's heart on a daily basis, because there's a couple things. He will tell you, he will instruct you. And for some of you on this call, that may mean that you move to the other side of the world to do what God is calling you to do. For most of us, or a lot of us, it means the relationships and the people we have in our lives on a daily basis, that is an obvious place to start. Remember, the question here is, who's your neighbor?
Yeah.
He's not asking, how do you solve all of life's problems? What is the policy to end robberies between Jericho and Jerusalem? He has no interest in that. He probably does. But you get my point. Here he's asking, what are you doing with the things that are in your path, right? I was going to go do this, and then somebody came and called or stopped by, and I was just about to blank, and now they're in my way to go do what I was intending to do. And I think sometimes we need to have our hearts pause and go, God, you just put this person here. Okay, I'm going to step in. It also means stepping toward the hurt, right? It's looking at what your skills and gifts are. That's a really important thing. I teach a lot of young people. They go, oh, I don't want to be proud. I said, what are you good at? I'm good at these things. Good. Go step towards situations that need that skill, because you should be raising your hand and stepping in because you have that gift and skill. Don't hesitate. What are you bad at? I'm bad at this. Don't step into those. Stay out of the way. Let others step in because they're good at that, right? Well, I'm supposed to be good at everything. Where did you get that from? Like, that's not even close to biblical. Like, learn who you are, learn these pieces, but then also recognize you're going to get to the limits of yourself in any situation that requires kindness, even where your gifts are. And I think we ought to begin to step out onto those things, not on our own power, but on God's power, right? And I think it's asking for the heart of God to see what he sees. It doesn't mean we're foolish, right? Somebody walks by and says, hey, I need $1 billion. And you're like, well, okay, Jesus, you put them in my way. There you go. Like, that's not the same thing, right? But we're looking at the heart of these situations, and we're looking at the help that we can provide. There's some wisdom in here, right? This guy doesn't stay in the inn for every day. He's still got his mission, right? I'm going to stay for a couple days. I'm going to care. I'm investing in your care. I'm making sure it's there. I'm going to go do my job, and then I'm going to come back, right? There's this piece of it that I love. It's just super practical, right?
I love that.
He's like, I'm off. I'll be back. Like, you sit here. Your job is to rest and repair. I've taken care of it. Bob, the innkeeper, is ready to take care of you, or Bobina. I don't know who it is. And there we have him continuing to do his motion. He's not paralyzed in the process.
I love that.
Helpful? Any thoughts on that rant, mini monologue?
I love it. That's exactly what I think. I saw that immediately, that he stopped, but he still went on. It didn't stop his mission, which is most important, and comes back to check on it. And that's important. You know, we don't just leave it, but we don't not do whatever we're intended to do. Because there's things, I'm getting a little too stopped personally, not by God, by myself. And that's what I'm working on. And I know my gifts, some of them. I know my weaknesses for sure.
I think giving our plans to God on a daily basis will allow us to not step over the bodies that God has put in front of us.
Amen. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It also means maybe you have to put in front of God your 5-year plan, right? To not step over the 5-year body that God is going to put in front of you, right? Those relationships, those needs that are longer than just a day. Sherry, you're going to say something.
5-year plans?
I don't know.
I need a 5-year plan. Go on.
I'm just having flashbacks.
Yes. I understand.
Of?
Oh, do I have to tell?
You don't. We're recording. You don't have to tell anything.
We're recording.
Yeah.
Did you say we are recording?
We are.
No, I'm about to cry. I'm gonna close my door here. Hold on. I don't even know what to say. I'm just having flashbacks of a young man who was sitting on the steps at the grocery store. And I was in such a hurry. Hi. Yeah, thanks. I was in such a hurry that I blew him off. And because I was on my way to get groceries to cook for somebody, because I was being a good Christian and I was making dinner for somebody else who had just come out of the hospital. And I was so busy and being, I don't know what, that I didn't pause. And those eyes burned a hole in my heart. And I swore I would never, ever walk past a hungry person ever again. And I judged him. He's wearing really expensive clothes, but he was hungry. So I walked, and I was on my way out. You know, sometimes when you're on your way in, it's easy to say, okay, let me grab something for you. What can you get? Come in, I'll buy groceries. And I've done that many, many, many times, but this time it was on my way out. And I was on my way to my car. And I got my car, I pulled into the pullout, and I'm like, what did I just do? I drove around, literally around the parking lot, came back in, he was gone. I just swore I'd never walk past another hungry person ever again.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
And that kind of launched my whole passion for foster care, because that was right at the same time I was learning about runaway youth, homeless youth, and why they run away. But at that moment, I was from a part of the world where the only runaways I've ever known of were rich kids who went to the West Coast to become rich and famous. I had no exposure to a world where children are safer on the street than they are in their own homes. And so just kind of, it was God's timing, I guess. But that was sort of the catalyst of looking for opportunities to serve in that community. But those blue eyes.
Yeah, listen, I mean, with a smaller group, what I love about some of this is that we can chat about some of these things. Here's my challenge to you guys is that there's a short term, right? We're in the middle of COVID. Kindness is needed, period. I don't care if you understand people's fears. I want us to understand them, but you don't have to agree with them. There's just a lot of fear, and kindness is something people are not experiencing with each other. I also think, and I was kind of resonating with Sherry's point, is what is God asking you to take a longer term view to kindness for, right? And similar to Sherry, you brought up foster. I mean, Megan and I had a 2-year conversation that ended with a question. We have a happy, healthy home. What are we doing about it? And I was like, but that's really inconvenient. Like, it is wildly inconvenient. It is not convenient. It is not convenient. And yet,
and it's
part
risky.
of it's super risky.
It's emotionally risky. It's financially risky.
It's all the risks. And one of the things we saw was God got bigger. The problems didn't get smaller. The hurt didn't get smaller. The ask got the need didn't get smaller, but God got bigger. And I think that was helpful for us. And I don't mean that for everybody, because we've had people talk to us and I'm like, please don't get into foster care. Like, you would not be good at, like, you're not, no. And it's not meant to be an insult. It's more meant to be like, your God's too small at the moment, and let's grow that, because I think that's a good piece. And so, and I'm not trying to pitch that specifically. I'm just resonating, Sherry, to what you said, which is real moments where we didn't know the answers to these things. And we had to step toward hurt, toward fear, toward these things. And I will also tell you, and Sherry, you can say this based on your story too and what you've done. I know this, and I'm sure others in this who haven't spoke up, you don't have to, but if you can, guess who's in the midst of all that is God. You find him there, and he's just as faithful and true as you experience. And he often will not give you all of the peace you're looking for before you jump in. It's often in the moment after you've jumped that he begins to feel it. So anyways, anybody else have any thoughts or things that God might be putting on your heart? Nancy, you're on mute. There you are.
I rolled out by unintentionally.
Yeah. Well, it's 7:53. I don't want to keep us all if we don't. I mean, I'm happy to hang around and keep chatting, but kindness, one of God's fruits he calls us to. We're called to produce it. The world desperately needs it. And I'm going to just leave with this one verse from Titus, which I love so much. It says this, but when the kindness of God, our Savior, in his love for mankind appeared. Do you see that? Do you want to know kindness? God says, I'm going to show you. You want to see my kindness? It is when I appeared, when Jesus came and died on the cross for our sins. You see me, I gave everything. I gave up all. It was wildly inconvenient. It cost me everything. But that was my kindness, because I wanted to redeem. I wanted to buy back at a great cost what a relationship with us. And I love that, because if we think about it, it didn't say God's truth drew us. Didn't say God's anger drew us. He says his kindness. He goes, I want you to see. When you see that, I want you to see kindness. And that is what's going to pull you to me. And so when we demonstrate kindness to those that are unworthy, or we deem unworthy, those that we struggle to, it's easy to be kind to someone when they're being kind back, when the return on the investment is well calculated in our heads. Jesus' return on our investment was, one that was not so good if you think about it, right? His own enemies, he died to save us. And there's the gospel, right? Without the gospel, we don't have a hope to be kind. We don't have a hope to be kind. And so I leave us with that, because that's our standard, not an unlivable standard that makes us despair every day, but a standard that is powered by the blood of Jesus, right? To drive our hearts to change and begin to become more and more like him every day. That we can do, right? If that's all the call is to become more like him every day, we can do that. We can do that.
And when you think we're in COVID, who probably was the loneliest man in the world, most misunderstood? No one. He had no one really. He had his apostles that all weren't sure he was telling the truth, what he was doing. They didn't even know. They didn't know he was God until after. Everybody challenged him. We can do this little challenge. It's just a little challenge. Jesus did the big challenge for us. I'm impressed with that. Whenever I try to be lonely, like the loneliness gets, it's hard for me. I have to say, never thought I'd be divorced. I am. Not a judgment, not anything, just never thought it. And it's like, very hard. So then I think, oh, but Jesus. And I say, I am so grateful. And it's a challenge every day we pick up.
One of my hopes for Story City in this time is that we would ooze these fruits. I'm more interested in us being kind than quote unquote right, whatever that means, right? In the midst of policies and decisions and face mask or not face mask or 6 feet or don't touch. I don't know the answers to all that, but I do know that kindness, I can do that.
Yeah.
And as long as he calls us to that, church, that's my goal, is to find out how much kindness we can pour into a situation like this. So listen, we went long. I apologize, only a little bit. No, I'm not really sorry at all. I'll be honest.
Josh, I want you to stick around so we can talk about how to manage all the mead. Like,
yeah, I'm going to hang up for sure, Sherry.
Topic for next week.
Called discipleship. You just keep making disciples, and then they help you begin to feel it. Maybe, I don't even know.
Oh man, there was a group of us who went down and served a meal at Skid Row about 3 months ago, and it was just so overwhelming.
I wasn't invited.
Just overwhelming.
Just kidding.
And
Maybe next time.
it does. It really breaks your heart, and you're there, and you're like, okay, I'm here, and I'm helping tonight, but like, it really does tug at your heart, and it doesn't even have to be Skid Row anymore. I mean, right here in Burbank, we've got tent cities popping up, within a mile of my house.
I've become more and more comforted by the fact that God doesn't expect that of us to fix all of it. But I do love the fact that whatever part I play in it, he's able to build on that. He's able to nurture some of those touch points, those kindnesses into something. Or somebody comes along a year later and they have another interaction with someone who loves God, and it's building and building. And you never get to see any of that until heaven, but I'm convinced it's there.
Yeah.
So it gives me joy to go, there it is. I don't know what's going to happen next. They walked away, but it doesn't matter. It does matter, but I don't have to carry the whole story. I don't have to carry the whole story. I really don't. So.
Amen.
Well, hey guys, my battery's about to die. Go ahead.
Thanks. It was very good.
My battery's about to die. I'm gonna pray real quick, and then I'm gonna hit unpause.
Okay.
Yeah. God, we just thank you for your courage and your kindness and telling us this story that has now fed Christians for thousands of years on what your heart is. I pray that you would remove from us a heart of religiosity, of ethnic superiority, of misunderstanding what matters to you, but that we would step towards your heart, and in doing so, you would give us the courage to see as you see, and give us the heart to see and believe the resources and the ability to supply all that we need in the work you would have for us. Bless this group. Thank you for a smaller group tonight to enjoy this. I think for all those who will watch this later on YouTube, that you would bless them and their thinking in their minds as they wrestle through this subject. Pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right,
Did you-
guys.
We'll see
Thanks,
that on
guys.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Oh, I love
Bye.
Oh, I'm being brave. I love you. I'm gonna dip.
I love you too, Nancy. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my.